Hello or namaste. Welcome to Atypical Dikkate, a conversation podcast. I'm your host Soumya, and in this podcast, I talk to fellow queer, neurodivergent, and disabled folks. This podcast is not just a repository of stories and experiences, but it is also a journey to build solidarity, queer intimacy, and a community while highlighting neglected issues, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. Today, I have Tiffany with me. Tiffany Brar is a blind activist, educator, and motivational speaker recognized as the courageous daughter of India by the former President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind. As founder of the Jyotirgamaya Mobile Blind School, Tiffany trains visually impaired people, especially women, in mobility, technology, and life skills. She advocates for accessibility in education and public spaces, and her work has earned her national recognition, including the National Award for Best Role Model and the Helen Keller Award. Hello, Tiffany. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hello. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you for inviting me to your episode.
It's really inspiring to know about your work, and I have done my own research and read about everything that you have done, especially the mobile school for visually impaired women and girls. But yeah, I'll just jump right into the theme of the episode and would like to know your experiences around that. My first question to you would be, can you share your first experience with menstruation and what it was like learning about it as a visually impaired person? And why do you think menstruation is considered a cultural taboo among the visually impaired?
I think in India itself, it is a cultural taboo among a lot of parents who don't like to tell their girl children, especially the middle class parents or the slightly below average parents who are less educated. They don't like to talk about it because they think it's a bad omen or it's not good or girls will know about it when they should. But of course, that may work with people who are not disabled. But when people are disabled, of course, you should tell them about it beforehand. Now, my experience, of course, was very fortunate also, but very unfortunate, I would say. In my fifth standard, I started menstruating. My mother was very sick, so my mother could not really teach me proper menstrual skills. And we had helpers because my father was an army officer. So they also used to just make me sit down, take off the sanitary pads, and they used to just put it any way they want or just do it in a haphazard way, and they would not actually show me, or my mother would also did not have the wherewithal or the patience to actually show me how to do it properly, how not to stain my clothes. And that was a very big embarrassment because in my school, in many occasions, I was found being the laughing stock among other girls. They would be like, oh look, and I would be like, what? And then they would say, one big red patch on Tiffany's bum. And then, of course, in sixth standard, seventh standard, eighth standard, all, you are sensitive about these kind of things. And for some time, I was in a blind school, and for some time, I was in what you would say normal school or integrated school. I got very upset once in my 10th standard when the girls had taken me out for recess, and I was walking, and suddenly one girl pointed out and said, oh look, to the other girl, and they were talking in whispers. And I understood what they were saying, and I said, is it about me? And they said yes. And then I just touched myself, and my uniform was wet. Now you can just imagine that kind of an experience when you're like, and there are boys in the school, there are girls in the school, and you're just standing there. And I was just helpless, and I was crying and crying nonstop. I just didn't know, eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't actually say anything. And then of course they took me to the girls dormitory. There was a hostel there. I was staying in a different hostel, of course, because I was visually impaired. And then the girls had to literally help me to wear the sanitary pad, and they had to give me one of their undergarments to wear and their school uniform to wear. And then I had to wear that, and I had to go back to class. So it was a very embarrassing incident. And the same thing happened in when my father was posted to a different location. I had to travel there by car. It was in Ooty, and I was in Kerala. I was traveling from hostel. And when I reached there, I did not know that I was menstruating. So the army drivers and the people who brought me, as soon as I came out of the car, of course, I had stained again, and they started laughing at me. Now, it's a very difficult situation to be surrounded by a number of men and to be laughed at like that. Now, they could have taken advantage of me or done any kind of thing. But then there was a warm person, a motherly lady who was there, who was one of the staff there. And she, of course, became my godmother, my guardian, Vinita. I call her Akka, which is Didi in Tamil, and she's still around with me now also. And she took me and she actually just didn't do what other people did, but she actually taught me what a sanitary pad is, made me feel it from all sides, made me feel where the sticker comes out, where the wings are, how to clip them to your panties, how to put at least two, so that as a blind person I would not be staining outside, and how to make sure it's stuck and it's one at the front and one at the back so that both areas are covered. And then she saw some advertisements after some days, and she said there are undergarments available abroad which have a kind of padding, and you should ask your father or somebody to get it for you. Now, because my grandmother lived abroad and my aunt is abroad, I asked them to organize that for me. So she literally taught me how to wrap the sanitary pads, how to wear them, how to take them off, how to wash my undergarments with stain remover, with soap or whatever. And after I started the Jyotirgamaya Foundation, I was able to teach other girls that, because there many girls are just not taught. There were girls who just took off the sanitary pad, brought it out of the bathroom and said, now what do I do? And when a sighted person sees this, of course, just seeing the sanitary pad, someone feels nauseating, someone feels like somebody else's blood. So we had to, my Didi is still here with me, and she's the one who's taught me all my life skills. So she also helped in teaching the other blind girls who I teach how to do this. It's been a safe experience since then. And now, of course, I'm 37 and I'm able to get to know when I get my menstruation, how to handle it, even to order the sanitary pads online, whatever I'm supposed to do to get my dustbin, whatever. These kind of things are very essential to be taught to people, especially with visual impairment and intellectual disabilities. Intellectual disabled people will have more of a problem because they don't really understand or they don't really comprehend. So there are many situations where intellectually disabled people can be taken advantage of sexually, and that has to really be taken care of. Some way has to be found where such people should be taught everything without any taboos, without any problem.
No, absolutely, Tiffany. I remember I was on a panel discussion a while back, and one of the panel members was a person with a visual impairment, and they shared how they get to know about their menstruation through smell. Because even us, we are not taught about that. There are different kinds of disabilities, and other disabled people are also not taught about these experiences. So, how do we
Yeah, but
even build?
yeah, but see, deaf people, of course, they can understand it because they are seeing
Yeah.
all these things. Even the advertisements on the television, they are seeing. They can also have more access. But people with intellectual disabilities and visual impairment have a lot of issues.
Absolutely. It's also required to exchange experiences in order to build empathy amongst each others, is what my thought came when you or my co-panel member back then shared their experiences. And even being like a sighted person, I remember I was in ninth grade and it was a Friday. We had white uniforms and I had completely
Yeah.
drenched my dress and became
Yeah.
a laughing stock, both
Yeah.
boys, girls. Then tying a sweater around my waist to had to call my dad, and all that stuff happened because it still remains a taboo.
But the thing is that as a non-disabled person, at least you can come to know what it is. However, as a disabled person, they are people judge us more because of our disability. That why are we see? A, we are a burden to the society,
Like,
and second, of course, there's the charity model, the medical model, and the social model.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we are always categorized under the charity model, that high bichara kind of thing, you know. So as it is, we are categorized under that. Now, when we are also not good in our daily living skills or hygiene and all that,
Mm-hmm.
people will just not come near us. Now, when we travel as disabled girls, people say that, oh, who'll take Tiffany? You have to keep picking her up and dropping her. But I'm someone who makes sure that I go by bus or I go by auto. I take my white cane. I just ask them, okay, where am I supposed to meet you? Okay, this place, this particular bus stop, this particular place, or this particular mall. I make sure I find it. And now,
Right.
of course, sometimes when I can afford, I go by Uber or sometimes by bus. So it depends on the time and depends on the schedule and depends on the resources at that available time. But there are many visually impaired people who cannot afford to travel by auto,
Absolutely.
Uber, or just now. Of course, the latest thing is, Acha, send me the location. Now there are many
Yeah.
people who have to go by bus, and they can't always just keep taking location. Of course, we can just double click on the location, and then of course it takes you to Google Maps, and then you book an Uber or you do something. But there are many people who need to know the name of the place. So if I'm planning to travel by bus, I'm like, okay, please tell me the name of the place and also the address, and then you can also send me the location, so that if I have to catch an auto, I can just share the location or whatever it is. So I don't make it a burden that people have to come and pick me up or drop me back. So I'm using my white cane. Now, of course, I try to also make sure that my other skills, my daily living skills, like I'm clean, I'm not sweating too much, or my body odor is not smelling too much, or my if I have my menstruation, I have to wear the necessary undergarments, the necessary pads, necessary. I should carry pads in my bag. I should be able to have a proper purse for that, so that I don't have to throw them in somebody else's dustbin. I should have a plastic bag. I should have a bag. So all these things I keep into account when I travel. Now,
I was diagnosed with autism very late in my life because I didn't have high support needs. And sometimes when I prepare like this to the granular level, even while traveling, what should it look like? How does it look like? I watch YouTube videos to make sure I can identify, I can navigate. People sometimes tell me like because it's too much, but if I don't, then I would need to take help from others, and then I don't want to feel like a burden. No, absolutely. But again, it has taken a lot to get there and learn those things so we don't end up feeling like a burden, even if people don't say it. Sometimes the way
uh,
people act makes it evident.
yes,
But
of
yeah,
course.
Tiffany, coming back to the topic, and I you briefly mentioned it actually, and I wanted to understand it a bit more. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced managing your periods, especially around using menstrual products and the hygiene factor? How
Well,
challenging is it for the visually impaired?
now, of course, there are many visually impaired people who use menstrual cup, but I just don't think that is. And they tell me also, my some of my students have learnt, of course, which is ahead of me. Some of my seniors who are visually impaired, they say, who are teachers in government sector and all, they say on the cup. But somehow I feel that when you have to use the cup, you have to actually make sure it is positioned properly into your vagina. You have to really make sure that it's there. Sometimes it may spill, sometimes it may, like when you're traveling and all by car or by bus or something, it may be shifted around. And also when you are actually removing the cup as a visually impaired person and it goes inside the commode, or if it's an Indian toilet, you have to also see that it doesn't fall inside. You have to see that where the blood is falling, because I think these kind of things, tampons and cups, are not really disabled friendly. And of course it's difficult for, like, I went to a foreign country and I have a friend. I was staying there with my friend, and she of course says that she uses a cup. And once she went out, and then another friend of mine who was in Kerala, he was also there. He just came to visit me. He was also there, and I had gone for an internship. So when he just said, "Okay, can I just go to the bathroom?" Because of course in foreign countries the bathrooms are common. So he went to the bathroom, and then he said, "Oh, the commode is very dirty." And then the owner or the founder of the fellow organization came, and she also said, "This is the bathroom." I could understand that it happened because that person had, the cup had overflowed, or the person, the menstruation came out on. And of course, in European countries and other countries, they don't use water; they use toilet paper, so that's even more difficult. I would not recommend the use of the menstrual cup unless you're really sure about it. And of course, it also causes discomfort it also causes pain. So it differs from person to person. A lot of people say the sanitary pads cause environmental disruption, but there are cloth sanitary pads, and that too is difficult for a visually impaired, because you have to wash the cloth, you have to make sure it's dried properly, you have to make sure there's no blood. So cloth pads are there, of course you can use cloth pads, but then of course for a disabled person or a visually impaired person to wash in the entire entire cloth pad. Of course, it's easy to wash your undergarments because there is a limited amount of stain or blood or, I mean, whatever. But in the pads, of course, it's very difficult to keep removing the cloth and inserting it back and doing these kind of things. So I would say that the disposable pads, even if it costs money, even if it is expensive or whatever it is, every person, every family should be able to at least do that much for their disabled people, to buy them pads and to have a place to dispose it, to show them where the dustbin is or where the common dustbin. And also the people with disability should really know how to dispose, like how to put it, wrap it up in newspaper and put it in a plastic bag, tie it up, and then dispose it in the public bin in the, like in the house or wherever. Yeah.
Absolutely, Tiffany. And the point you mentioned about menstrual cups, it's not very accessible. Like, even I am
No.
scared of using it because putting anything inside my body, because it stems from two reasons. One is not knowing your body, that fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
and because it's a cultural taboo, even asking questions and knowing about it, it's
Yeah,
difficult
and
because
plus asking somebody physically, like maybe someone might teach you how to wear a sanitary pad because it's on you're inserting, you're wearing it on your clothes, on your panty. So that may be, but for someone to actually physically, as a disabled or intellectually disabled or visually impaired, for someone to physically help you insert this particular thing into your vagina to make sure the mouth is inside and the hole is it's properly inserted and it doesn't move around and all, that is very difficult, it's very challenging. No person would probably agree to teach you, and you would probably learn yourself when it can or cannot go wrong. There are partially sighted people, of course, who may be seeing this on YouTube and trying to do it all, but for a totally blind person, as my experience, I would not recommend it, and it's difficult.
no, absolutely. Tiffany, over time, what were some ways that you found or developed that helped you manage menstruation more easily and independently?
Of course, yeah, of course. Like I told you, my Didi was a very important person to help me do this. And she taught me how the structure of a sanitary pad, how to wear it, how to take it off, how to also feel like how to really concentrate, how to concentrate and see when you have to change. There are many visually impaired people who just, because they have to change after half an hour, they will change. But no, you have to just at least wait for a certain amount of time, see that it is full. And of course, yeah, you have to touch it with a little bit with your fingers and see, like, from, you don't have to really put your hand there, but at least from the top to the end. This, of course, I learned myself, and you have to really find out whether it is full or not, and then of course you can change. Yeah.
Tiffany, sexual education is important, right? Our
Yeah.
conversation has revealed that, and it has to be intersectional to cater to different kinds of disabled people, including
Yeah.
visually impaired people,
Yeah.
intellectual disabilities. In your view, what specific awareness efforts, information formats, or institutional changes would make SRHR, including contraception, abortion rights, and menstrual
Yeah.
health, more accessible for visually impaired individuals? Also, why do you think many organizations currently avoid or neglect conducting tailored sessions on HR for visually impaired people?
Actually, we conduct workshops. We used to conduct workshops, women's workshops. We conduct 2, 3 workshops where we had people, we had doctors, we had specialists in reproduction who came and taught. And once one of my teachers, she was a she's a counselor, but she's also done a course in SRHR and all that. And she's a teacher in a secondary school. She's also a home science teacher. And she said that we should conduct this session with girls and boys together. Many people were reluctant, but then we conducted this session together, and everyone had a lot of questions to ask. It was like a very productive session. And once we conducted it only for women, where women were taught how to use these products. And also, we were, as I told you, I received a 7-day training by Mobility International USA, where I also got to know about Kriya and all those things. They had actually showed us the models of male organs. So, what is a male organ? What is a condom? How it is inserted? But of course, the female condoms, yeah, they were not shown to us. But these are also things that need to be shown to visually impaired people, as in how to do, how not to do, and what visually impaired girls should be able to ask questions, of course, on all these factors. And in one of the camps that I conducted in 2014, we conducted a mobility training and skill development camp. And I was the person who had an idea that we should conduct a special session on SRHR. And I invited a woman worker, a government women rehabilitation worker, to conduct this session for us.
Tiffany, I have a couple of follow-up questions regarding this. When it comes to SRHR, also like including guidance on education on abortion rights, how to navigate hospitals, what are the legal rights, contraception, etc. What is the need of the hour?
Yeah, I have not actually confronted this kind of a hospital situation or abortion related situation. But of course, just according to my mental this thing, I would say that, of course, if a person with visual impairment goes to the doctor, of course, we will be questioned left and center much more than a sighted person. And especially in a country like India, there are many doctors who say that, oh, she's like this and she's gone and done this. Even if people are married, why are they having an abortion? What is the reason? In fact, doctors should be more understanding to such people, especially where they may have a reason why. Some people may be sexually exploited, some people may have made a mistake with their partner or boyfriend, some people may be married and they don't want a child. So doctors should be prepared to listen than to judge. Doctors should never be a person to judge.
Another thing, Tiffany, you mentioned some sensory activities in order to conduct capacity building with visually impaired people on SRHR topics. So, what kind of information, according to you, educational resources or activities would support, and even support systems would better support visually impaired people?
We should have a one-to-one interaction with doctors. We should have women practitioners in this field. We should have more and activities like, yeah, I'm not so sure about sensory activities, but of course we should be shown all these things and we should be taught about all these things. We should be made to touch and feel all the necessary, the menstrual products, the contraceptive products. We should be taught about the abortion pills, how to procure these pills. All these kind of things we should actually learn so that we can train others. Even if we are not going to be experts in this field, we can at least tell our fellow friends or fellow colleagues or fellow individuals who have this problem.
You mentioned to me briefly when I was trying
Yeah.
to frame the questions, like contraception continues to be a sensitive topic even within the community. Could you shed a little more light on that and how can we navigate around it or solve for it?
See, no one talks about contraception. See, why do people have to use contraception? First, it's a taboo that if a child is born, let it be born. It's a part of sin to spur to not to allow the natural process to happen and to use contraception. And at the same time, it's also a necessity to protect ourselves from diseases. So we should be made aware of sexually transmitting diseases. And secondly, we should also be aware of contraception if we do not want to have a child. Now, in foreign countries, the pill is readily available and anyone can go and buy it. Here also, I guess it is. But as a disabled person, if I want to go and buy it, or if XYZ girl wants to go and buy it, we will be, of course, taunted by the medical store guy. Now, I don't think this is something that anyone can take up. I'm not sure that whether any organization can just go and say, hey, medical shop guy, you better be sensitive to people with disabilities if they want to buy the ECPs. That I don't think is going to work because that is the taboo and the barrier, the attitudinal barrier that ECP. So that kind of thing is a general attitudinal barrier. And even if this, I don't know, of course, how we can solve this. Of course, in each state, we can't have sensitization workshops to for each medical practitioner, but doctors should be able to give this pill readily. And a disabled person should probably be introduced if we're having sessions in Kerala, if or in Delhi or in XY organization, suppose an app center for women Delhi. So they should probably call a doctor, the doctor or a practitioner and health worker. And the disabled people or girls should be given access to that health worker around that particular area and around the area where they will go, so that they can probably call them and ask doubts and also ask if they can learn about contraception, if they need the pill, if something like that, because it's not very easy for a disabled person to go and get it from the open market. And people might need it, people might be exploited, people might be hurt, people might have it accidentally with their husband, people might have it accidentally with their partners. So it's not something that you can judge on the basis of disability. It happens to everyone.
Thank you, Tiffany. It's a lot of food for thought how we plan our training sessions, how we plan our programs, even when we talk about inclusivity and disability.
Yeah, so all this is like very well, but then it's not easy to actually bring this away. No matter how many trainings or how many sessions we conduct to make the general public or even parents understand
Yeah.
that their disabled girl children have these needs. And even boys, for example, what about boys? Why don't we ever talk about boys? Boys also may probably want to know about what is a sexual relation, what is a contraception, what is a condom, all these kind of things. There's so who educates boys? There are a lot of homosexual boys in many boys' hostels. There are a lot of boys who are conducting homosexual activities because they don't know what to do with their hormones. They are curious. No one teaches them, no one tells them. And also in girls' hostels, also, especially in the visually impaired, they are conducting such kind of activities because there's no one to tell them. There are many people who still don't know how to use their pads. There are many people who are conducting homosexual activities without knowing how and what are the consequences, why, how this kind. It's not that we can allow them to have these kind of relations, but we should actually explain them the consequences of what it is, how it is.
Absolutely. Awareness is required so that people and young people can make informed decisions
Yeah,
about
yeah, they can
themselves
make
and their
informed
bodies.
decisions. Yeah, of course. Who gives this awareness is a very big question.
Absolutely. If it comes from the wrong places, then it creates more harm.
Yeah.
Um, so, Tiffany, as a parting thought, I have one final nudge question for
Mm.
you. How do
Yeah.
you feel the broader disability rights and feminist movements can better include and support the needs of visually impaired comrades?
I think many organizations are working especially for this, like Rising Flame, run by Nidhi Goyal. Of course, you may be knowing Nidhi Goyal.
Yeah.
She's a very well-known visually impaired activist who even works with UN Women. She works with and she's someone who I admire for the work that she is doing, for the awareness that she is giving. Of course, I'm a special educator, and my main job is to teach computers and mobility and life skills. As a part of life skills, I myself took interest in doing the DSROI, the Disability Rights, Sexual Rights Online Institute, where I met Neluka ma'am online, of course. During the year 2020, we did this. It was organized by Kriya in Delhi, and we used to attend online. And there were many topics about this, and all many articles and many situations, role plays, all those things. So I myself decided to attend this course and also to do the course by Mobility International USA, which makes me a little bit qualified to conduct such kind of sessions. And I also call in practitioners. I have access to practitioners when needed. But the work that Nidhi is doing, of course, Nidhi has really devoted her life to this. And I hope many Nidhis come. And I hope many people like that try to conduct this kind. And also Shalini Khanna ma'am, the founder of NAB Center for Women New Delhi, she is also really working a lot in this. They have proper sessions where they have dolls as models and they teach the visually impaired how to wear the bras or how to wear the panties, how to do these kind of things. And I'm sure they teach about menstrual hygiene, but there are very few organizations. I think these are the only two organizations that I know in India who are practicing these kind of things. And of course, Sunita Krishnan's mom's organization is of course for everyone. So it's not only for visually impaired, but these are the two organizations that I know. And of course, Nidhi Goel's organization is working for youths and women and girls with disabilities. So it's not only visually impaired, but I think that there should be more practice. These kind of things should be practiced in schools and colleges, in special schools, not in only NGOs like this, but in special schools and government schools. Sexual education should be not part of the curriculum, but there should be some kind of workshops for children in at least after 8th, ninth, and 10th who are able to understand these kind of concepts at least once in a month or at least twice a year. Practitioners should be brought and such kind of sessions should be conducted if possible for both genders together. Also, the mingling of girls and boys should not be prohibited so much as to such an extent where
Absolutely.
it is a cultural taboo, because it's too much, it's too suffocating for people, especially those whether they are with disabilities or whether they are without disabilities. It's very suffocating for them to actually not mingle with the opposite gender, and then the curiosity heightens, the curiosity increases, is that why are we not being allowed to mingle with the opposite gender? What is so different about them? Why is it different? And then we want to explore, we want to get into relationships, and then when we are not given the freedom, we want to, when we get the freedom, we want to dive deeper. And then, of course, we can't share it with anyone. And then, of course, we make a mistake or we get into trouble. So, these kind of things, we should be allowed to be friends from the beginning itself, from the young age itself, so that it's not abnormal for a girl to talk to a boy. I studied in a girls' school, and there were many girls who were in the girls' school from first standard to ninth standards. And then suddenly they wanted to hear a boy. They wanted to hear a boy's husky voice, and they got feelings from that. There are visually impaired girls who are aroused by hearing the boy's voice. And that's how visually impaired girls fall in love, by hearing the voice, by hearing certain dialogues. Of course, sighted people may fall in love by looking at a guy. Oh, he's so good looking. Oh, he's so handsome. He's so hot. All that and that. But how does a visually impaired girl fall in love with a guy? By hearing a certain voice, or hearing a husky voice, or hearing a certain words, or certain dialogues, or something like that. But it's more to the voice that the girl gets attracted. It's not to the expression. And also, I would say that for the boy also, boys get attracted to girls also by their voice, especially the visually impaired. And we should be able to discuss it also with our teachers or wardens, or that there should be special counselors, who are qualified in this field.
Absolutely. And Tiffany, this was not in the original plan, but do you have any message for parents, caregivers, or like teachers of disabled people, especially visually impaired people, that you would like to share?
Okay, I would divide it into three. For parents, I would say try to be a friend to your children. Of course, I would, as I'm a motivational speaker, I say this to parents with who have children with or without disabilities. Try to be a friend to your child from the beginning, so the child does not lie to you. So the child does not have to go against the situation and land themselves into very deep trauma, very deep consequences. Try to avoid those kind of situations by being friendly, by talking to your children from the beginning itself about the do's and don'ts and the pros and cons of life, about everything about life, especially after they are attending puberty, after the age of 11 or 12. For boys and girls, parents should try to satisfy their curiosity, should try to be a friend to them, should try to allow them to mingle freely with the opposite gender, especially in today's generation with AI, with chat GPT, with all these kind of things where people are using the phone more, people are relying more on their friends. So there should be a kind of bondage between parents and children, especially on these kind of sensitive topics, especially mothers and children. And what I would like to say to teachers and counselors is teachers and counselors should also be more open about these topics, should be less judgmental, should allow the girls and the boys, especially in their teenage, especially in their vulnerable ages, even those who are college going, to actually vent out, to actually explore their emotions, to ask about menstruation, to ask about menstruation handling, to ask about even what is a sexual relation, how it happens, what is the process, what is the consequence. Even some people will never know how it feels like. There are some visually impaired people who just cannot get married, whose parents may not want them to get married because they will be a burden on the husband's family, or they may not be taken care of well, or they may be cheated. So some parents prefer not to get them married, so they will not ever know, and they might just go outside to actually find out. So the parents, teachers, counselors should talk more about these things. Education should be given, awareness should be given, organs should be shown, organs, the role models of organs, the physical models, contraceptive products should be also shown in workshops and sessions. And access should be given, at least after the age of 17 or 18, to disabled girls and boys, to certain health workers or whatever it is, so that they can clear their doubts without judgment.
Thanks so much, Tiffany, for sharing everything, your knowledge, insights, and just talking to me as well. It was lovely having you on Atypical.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very privileged to give whatever my knowledge is. And of course, I'm not such an expert, but of course, this is just my experience as a visually impaired person, and also the trainings I've received, the experiences that I've had, and the people who I have shared with being a special educator.
No, this is very inspiring, Tiffany, and it means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode. So thank you so much for sticking around. You can listen to Atypical Dikkate on your choice of podcast platform. And if you want to reach out to me, your host Soumya, check out the Linktree link in the description. See ya.